First person? The knock at the barn door rattled me, a harsh staccato against the quiet evening. I opened it to find 4 men in black shirts, the word troll emblazoned across their chests. They didn't wait for an invitation. The leader stepped forward. "You Briggs?" he asked. I didn't answer. My instincts told me this wasn't a friendly visit. One of the men glanced at his companions nervously. "We're from the HOA," he added, voice too rehearsed, too formal. "Of course," I said, stepping aside but keeping my gaze fixed. "Come in, if you must." They didn't. They lingered at the edge of the barn, shifting uncomfortably, scanning the property. "Your board has been crossing onto my land," I said evenly. "I've been keeping records." The tallest one scoffed. "Are you allowed to do that?" I tilted my head. "Are you allowed to trespass?" No one answered. A woman in the group, phone in hand, tried to compose herself for a recording. "This harassment will be noted in our report," she said, voice shaking despite the attempt at authority. I simply nodded. "Be sure you spell my name right." They backed off, stepping over gravel with awkward urgency. The sedan door slammed behind them, and the engine roared, kicking up dust as they fled. I watched until the dust settled, then returned to the porch, pulled out my notebook, and began writing. Time, license plates, words spoken, behavior, positioning. Not paranoia, discipline. The lessons of a soldier. When someone tries to tell your story, make sure you record it yourself. That night, the desert air cooled rapidly, the kind of chill that bites deep into the bones. At my kitchen table, under the warm lamplight, I reviewed what someone had sent me, a video from the HOA meant to portray me as unstable. I noticed first the unnatural rhythm of their voices, tiny skips, clipped breaths, syllables that didn't land naturally. Fear when faked is always too smooth. Real fear stumbles. Real fear stutters. Then, a shadow. A man appeared beside the woman in frame, but it didn't match the sun's direction. Wrong length, wrong softness. Artificial. I felt that old, familiar unease, a soldier's sixth sense. They weren't just pushing me. They were scripting me. I pulled up my drone footage. There it was. Staging. Lines practiced, instructions whispered, steps choreographed toward my property line. I documented everything. Screenshots, timestamps, folders labeled HOA Fabrication Master File. Even as I worked, the pieces of the puzzle came together. Someone with influence was behind this. That kind of power leaves fingerprints. I realized I needed more than digital evidence. Forged documents are never online. They live in file cabinets. By morning, I was at the Clark County Records Office scanning through petitions, maps, and maintenance filings related to Silver Ridge Estates. The building smelled of old paper, stale glue, and air freshener, a bureaucratic graveyard. A clerk retrieved the files with subtle hesitation. Among the papers, one stood out, a county map, too polished. Lines subtly shifted, placing my road outside my property and into a community corridor. On the bottom, a signature, Assistant Director Edward Mallory, except it didn't match earlier filings. A forgery. My jaw tightened. They had already acted, filing paperwork to take my road before I even realized the fight had begun. I photographed the map, the forged signature, the stamped memo, and sent it to Nolan. Found the truth. His reply was immediate. "Get home. We're going to war." That afternoon, the feed store was quiet. Only the hum of the ceiling fan and the dusty scent of hay pellets in the air. I had come for a 50-pound salt block and some mineral mix. Simple errands to settle the mind. Then I noticed him. Mid-30s, too clean, polished boots, manicured beard, didn't belong in ranch country. Watching me from the coolers.
"Excuse me,"
he said, approaching.
"I'm Tyler. I run a podcast, Fields of Valor, focusing on veterans adjusting to civilian life."
I let his hand hang in the air. "A podcast?" I said flatly.
Yeah, we highlight struggles, anger, PTSD, adjustment, the hard stuff. I heard about the property line altercation.
He thought he had found a crack, but my hands tightened around the salt block just slightly, enough to alert him. Yes, I said softly. And your lapel mic? His smile faltered. The device peeked from under his jacket. I nodded toward the SUV outside. Your partner's using the front camera as a live feed. Linda smudged, thumb pretending to scroll. His face went pale. I stepped closer. If the HOA wants to manipulate, provoke, and record, they've picked the wrong person. You're done. I activated a small signal disruptor. Pop. His lapel mic cut out. He covered it, flustered, realizing his setup was useless. Go tell whoever hired you, I play better games than they can imagine. He turned and ran. I watched the dust cloud from the SUV drift across the road. Back at the ranch, quiet returned, but not comfort. On my porch was a courier envelope, pristine, addressed to me. No note, no return. Inside, legal documents titled Mutual Use and Access Agreement, Silver Ridge Estates, HOA. I scanned it carefully, a peace offering disguised as control. By the third page, the knife appeared. The HOA would retain veto power over all road modifications, from gravel repairs to ditch maintenance, binding arbitration, administrative review, private contractors monitoring. Nolan reviewed it with me over the phone. He said, "This isn't a peace offering, it's surrender, disguised. They're panicking because they failed, and cornered animals are dangerous." I folded the documents with precision and set them aside. Nolan would handle the official response, polite, professional, but devastating. A letter noting any future obstruction would be treated as unlawful encroachment, and forged petitions carry both civil and criminal consequences. I stepped out, looked down my dusty road. 20 years of work, my father's footsteps embedded in every gravel path, every washout repaired. Not a foot would be surrendered. By sunrise, defensive moves weren't enough. I grabbed my old metal footlocker, pulling out notes, numbers, and contacts. One call, Luis Ortega, ex-drone operator, now civilian mapping specialist. Within an hour, he arrived with a black Tacoma full of drones and equipment. We surveyed the ridge, thermal scans, 3D topography, mapping my land versus the HOA's claimed corridor. Every improvement I had made over 20 years lit up the screen. Subsurface compaction, gravel spreads, grades, all unmistakably mine. The HOA's fake lot lines, off by 23 feet. Their removed gatehouse foundation, clearly on my land. We expanded surveillance. 6 solar-powered, encrypted cameras in a grid. Every inch monitored. Uploads to 3 cloud servers. Later, Milton, my neighbor, arrived with a small metal box. Inside, a Super 8 film reel, capturing my father spreading gravel decades earlier. Proof of my family's work, a record older than the HOA itself. Luis digitized it. Thermal scans, drone footage, historical film, all backing my claim. Operation Freedom Road was underway. Not defense anymore, counter-offensive. Truth as ammunition. By late afternoon, HOA contractors returned. High-visibility vests, lasers, geospatial scanners, stakes in the ground. They were retrofitting their fake map to reality. Every move recorded by our grid, time-stamped and geotagged, synced to multiple clouds. At 12:47 a.m., nighttime surveillance caught a familiar face, Karen Daly, the HOA president herself, overseeing the operation. Her coordination turned their fraud into a conspiracy. Felony-level evidence. We had it all. Morning broke with a strange stillness, the kind that comes right before something big. Nolan arrived before sunrise, coffee in one hand, a folder in the other. "They're spiraling," he said, dropping the folder on my table. "I analyzed their so-called mutual access agreement. It's not an agreement. It's a takeover, dressed up as a handshake." Inside the folder were notes. Arbitration written to always favor the HOA, permanent veto power over my road, compliance reviews that allowed surprise inspections, and buried in the fine print, they could install checkpoints anytime they wanted. It wasn't desperation. It was a trap. But now, we had our trap. Phase 2 went into motion. Luis launched the large drone, a heavy-duty quad with long-range thermal and a silent rotor kit. High above the ridge, the feed came in sharp. Fresh tire tracks, mud scraped by boot heels, equipment dragged across ground that wasn't theirs. We mapped everything. Their fake corridor, their illegal surveying, their midnight stakes, Karen Daly's SUV parked behind the wash, and their entire layout down to the centimeter. With each pass, Luis tagged GPS data synced to redundant servers. Even if they burned our equipment, the evidence lived on. Back at the house, we digitized Milton's old Super 8 reel. The footage showed my father and Milton in the early 90s spreading gravel by hand along the same road the HOA now claimed was community property. The date stamp, the cars, the fence lines, everything predated their entire subdivision. "This," Nolan said, "is the nail in their coffin." By midday, the evidence file was complete. Thermal scans, GPS tracks, cloud-synced video, historical footage, forged signatures, and nighttime recordings of Karen Daly overseeing the illegal surveying crew. We printed a formal packet for the judge, each page stamped, numbered, and notarized, every piece of their lie laid out with calm precision. The courtroom smelled of varnished wood and old paper, that familiar scent of truth about to be tested. Karen Daly sat at the defendant's table, trying to maintain her perfectly rehearsed poise, but her hands betrayed her, fidgeting beneath the surface. Judge Porter entered, a man known for short patience and sharp memory. Nolan presented first. The authentic Bureau of Land Management servitude record, historical aerial imagery, Milton's converted footage, drone scans proving 20-plus years of maintenance, and the kicker, Karen Daly on our nighttime surveillance, personally directing the illegal surveying crew. Karen tried to object, but each attempt collapsed under timestamps, metadata, or notarized documents. Her attorney whispered frantically. She pretended not to hear him. Judge Porter leaned forward. "Mrs. Daly, you oversaw a falsified land survey, authorized forged filings, and attempted to claim land that was never part of your jurisdiction. This is not a misunderstanding. This is intentional fraud." The room fell silent. His ruling was swift and clean. The Briggs Road, 14B, was legally mine, exclusively. The HOA charter over that area was revoked immediately. All checkpoints, signage, and claims were ordered removed within 48 hours. A criminal investigation into the HOA board commenced on the spot. Karen's face drained of color. Deputies approached her. She didn't resist. She just stared at the floor, the weight of her collapse finally sinking in. Justice doesn't always make noise. Sometimes it whispers. 2 days later, the illegal kiosk was hauled off my property. Survey stakes yanked out. The fabricated map withdrawn from county records. The sun felt different on the ridge that week. Brighter, more honest. The settlement funds arrived within the month. I used them to install a new cedar sign at the head of the road. Private road, Briggs Estate. Authorized access only. Burned clean into the wood. Permanent. Nolan, Luis, and helped me set it. Milton filmed it like a proud grandfather. And then came the idea that changed everything. We built a simple website, backoffmyland.com. Templates, guides, forms,
a place for property owners everywhere to document, defend, and push back legally against HOA overreach. Within a week, thousands visited. Within a month, regional newspapers wrote about it. Within 3 months, HOAs across 4 states were forced to halt similar land grabs. One road turned into a movement. At sunset, I walked along the gravel my father once laid with his own hands. The wind moved softly through the sage, the sky painted in gold and deep orange. The land was quiet again, honest again. I stopped at the bend, looked back at the long stretch of road, and breathed in slow. They tried to erase my history. Instead, they revived it. Some victories roar. Mine whispered across the desert and settled into the land that was always ours.
Every neighborhood has its secrets, and every Karen leaves her mark. If you love true HOA stories like this, make sure to watch more on our channel, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life neighborhood drama. Thank you.